it going? This is Brandon. I'm here with Joe Shoes, aka the Revolting Blob.
I like how Joe Shoes is like my government name now.
Yeah, it is. It's just your shoot name now.
Yeah,
That's what you get. So how you been?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me.
Great. Thank you for being able to be here. Uh, so first off, you came on my radar through the Major Wrestling Figure podcast, and so you knew Brian first or Matt first? That
I
what
don't
kind of got
know. I
you
don't
into it?
know if I still know Matt,
Yeah.
to be honest. um, I'm definitely Brian's friend.
Okay.
I knew of them from the New York indie scene. I think I was on the scene a little bit before them, but they were training out in Long Island with Mikey Whipwreck, and I was actually training in Brooklyn with Johnny Rods, and our paths never really crossed on the indie scene. But like I knew of them, but it wasn't even until much later where I even became friends with Brian, and that was really through just being Mets fans.
Okay.
And I would talk a little smack on Twitter because he had to do. There was a WrestleMania in New York. He had to do an appearance at Yankee Stadium,
Yep.
and there's a picture of him like on the field, and it was like him, the Big Show, and like a couple other people. But like Brian's like wearing this Yankees jacket,
Oh.
and like the story goes, they tried to get him to wear a hat as well, but he told them he was having too good of a hair day, so he wouldn't have to wear the hat.
Oh man.
But I saved the picture of him in the Yankees jacket, and I would just tweet it to him every now, even though I didn't even know the guy, but
Oh
like
god.
just to break his balls a little bit.
Oh
And that's
man.
when he got released the first time. We had been on a couple shows together, so we kind of connected through that.
Oh nice. And I mean, the best friendships start by breaking each other's balls,
Yeah, now he's like someone I talk to just about every day. So,
right? It's like him and Cena are like the non-Met, I mean Yankees fans that had to wear Yankee stuff,
oh, dude,
which is like,
when the Mets were in the playoffs in 2015, I'm like a big John Cena like apologist to an
uh-huh.
extent. Like I think John Cena is the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
And when the Mets were in the playoffs, I posted a picture of Cena like throwing out the first pitch wearing a Mets jersey. But then I also would have like an alternate photo of Cena throwing out the first pitch against whoever the Mets were playing in their jersey. And I'd be
Oh
like,
god, yeah.
damn it, John Cena, why are you doing this to me, boy?
Right. I have one of my college friends, diehard Mets fan, '06 when they lost to the Cardinals.
Oh, worst day of my
I've
life.
never seen a grown man cry until that
Oh,
day.
I cried.
And
Yeah.
yeah, he cried. And then we went through like a couple weeks later, they had like pledge names. So they named him Yadier Molina.
Oh, that would destroy me.
They just rubbed it in. They just twisted the knife.
That's the salt in the wounds.
Yeah, I'm a Phillies fan, so I was just happy that he was a
Oh,
good
so
kid.
so I don't think we're gonna get along then.
Yeah, right. We're gonna end it right now. Um, so what kind of got you into collecting? I see a lot of Masters of the Universe, and from you being on Boozing with the Toys and stuff, it seems like were you big into the cartoon as soon as it came out?
Yeah, as far back as I can remember, I was a He-Man Masters of the Universe fan. I mean, I was born in '81, so basically, as far back as my memories go,
Yeah.
He-Man was a thing. And the way I try to compartmentalize my collecting or what I was into at certain periods of my life were by my birthday parties, because my mom would have like a birthday party for me every year, and the theme of the party would be like whatever I was most into at that time.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
like my fourth birthday party had like a He-Man tablecloth and some plates, and then my fifth was Thundercats, six was GI Joe, and seven was wrestling, and and so on and
Yeah.
so on. And He-Man, Thundercats, and GI Joe are like my three biggest fandoms. Probably in that
Yeah.
order as well.
And they're the three that are getting the reboots. They're getting the
And
push.
I'm collecting all of them again right now. So it's funny how that all wraps around. And so, like I said, my fourth birthday was He-Man, and this past September I turned 39, so it was 35 years later, and I actually got to go see my parents. And I had gone on eBay and found all the He-Man party like supplies, the paper
Oh, nice.
plates and the tablecloth and the hats and stuff. So I had gone to my parents' house, and in the middle of the night, I decorated the kitchen with all this He-Man stuff. And I remember, like, my mom has a very, very filthy mouth, like a sailor. And and I said, I go, but she at the same time she loves the nostalgia and the memories of when my brother and I were kids. So
So just
like
hit the bleep.
that's the thing. So like when Christmas comes along, she
Yeah.
wants us. She really misses us being small children and being so excited to wake up on Christmas and rip open presents. And so the part of me that hasn't grown up yet is like still able to give her these things, but in like an adult way. And she'll look at it and she'll get nostalgic and she'll get a tear in her eye. But then at the same time, she's like, "You're almost 40. What are you doing? Enough of this already."
Right? Exactly. I feel you. And I feel like it's like collectors get it. Like if you ask a fellow collector, you show them the picture and you're like, oh, okay, that's not weird at all. Like you
Yeah.
love He-Man as a kid. If you're anybody else, you'd be like, like you knew that like,
especially for like I think as we continue to go along, geek culture, nerd culture has become such mainstream stuff now that people in our stratosphere don't even blink an eye at it anymore.
yeah.
But for people who aren't so exposed to that, like the prior generation, like my parents, like my dad never really collected anything. He was just like once he got to be like 12, he just went to work, and that was like, I guess that's
exactly,
what they
right?
did.
Yeah.
Like he tells stories. He's like, oh, I was 7 years old sweeping out in front of the bakery, and
Yeah.
I was like, my man, that sounds terrible. Like,
yeah. My dad's like, I had to get up at 4:30 to get my paper route ready.
Yeah, I had to walk uphill with one pair of shoes, and
yeah, we had to share it between 10 of us.
So it's like she, like my family looks at it and they're like, well, it makes them happy, so I guess it's cool. But like, I mean, it's a whole thing. They don't understand the scope of like the people out there in the world of collecting and collectors and all that stuff. But it's fun.
Yeah, it is. It's just the thrill of it, especially like just hunting for it, like finding something like that you were like, I just found this. It's perfect timing. Pull the trigger.
Oh,
nothing better.
That is just. I was having a conversation with someone the other day who they were like, they don't really collect as much anymore because they're just in like that weird space in their life where they don't have the room and the money doesn't make sense, but they still hunt and then either just give the toys to their friends or sell them to their friends at cost or whatever, or try and flip, but they love still the hunt of it. And the hunt of it, I mean, I remember I have a buddy from high school who was like my wrestling friend, and if you listen to the Major Pod, you know the Steve Negron stories from Mark.
Oh my God, yeah.
So I called my friend Armando my Steve Negron.
Nice.
And when I first got my driver's license, we would get in the car and just try. Like we'd have days where we would just drive and try to go like every Toys R Us we possibly could, because we're like, yo, we need to find some ECW figures, or we got to find the new series of Jacks, because we were both collecting wrestling heavy. So it was just stuff like that, and like that would be our day, like, and it was the best, like
right.
that hunt. The hunt is such a cool part of it, and it sucks that retail can't give you that experience anymore right now. It seems.
Yeah, and it's like the pandemic hurt the small shops that you go to get that experience. But I feel like hopefully they'll make a comeback in next year, 2 years, next 3 years.
It's tough to say with the pandemic now, because even like I just got vaccinated, and I was trying to think of like, all the things that I could go do now, once like, more and more people start to get vaccinated, the world starts to open up a little bit more. And it was like, I didn't even know where to start. Like, it was like, has my life just become like, I only think of it as going to work, going by once a week to the supermarket and going home, and then doing everything else online. Like,
yeah.
So I don't know if like now that's just become, over the past year and change, if that's become such a part of the culture, how is that going to change the way we do things moving forward now? So interesting times lie ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I'm fingers crossed that once more people get vaccinated and things can start opening up, it kind of gets to a new, like they say, new normal.
The new normal, yeah.
A normal where it's more common sense, where it's just like, don't cough on people, don't be an idiot.
Correct.
Like, but so moving, like talking about the new stores with the big box stores, with Target bringing out their Cobra Island, GI
Oh,
Joes, and then all the stuff that now that Walgreens are getting them and they're getting the regular ones and all. But
oh,
do
are they?
I've seen them at Walgreens a couple times, but it's very few and far between because as soon as someone posts on it in the local Minnesota group, it's just gone. Like everyone,
Gotcha.
you see it, everyone's like, you see it, you buy it. We
Mhm.
have a lot of collectors out here that are of that age, like late 30s,
Yeah,
mid
yeah, yeah.
40s, that are like GI Joe. I grew up getting the 3.75 figures. So, do you, as being a classic GI Joe person, I was never a big GI Joe fan. My 80s were Star Wars and real Ghostbusters and Batman. But are you a fan of the 6 inch because you can do more, or do you miss the old? Because they're doing
So
those.
they're doing the retros.
Yeah, they're doing the retro.
So when Classified first started, I got really hyped about it. I'm like, oh my god, these are basically WWE Elite figures, but for GI Joe.
Yep.
I'm like, oh, this is so cool. But I'm like trying to contain myself because I have, I guess, like an addictive personality where it's very easy for me to become like, if I buy one, I got to be a completist.
Yeah.
So with classifieds, I looked at it and I tried to limit myself just to the characters I like. And with GI Joe, it's basically all the Cobra guys, Cobra
Okay.
Commander, Destro, Zartan, and the like. All I've ever wanted in life was to be like a Dreadnought in a GI Joe movie.
Nice.
Like I thought like, I don't need to be the main guy, but if I could be like Torch or Ripper, like that, that would be great.
A henchman with a reputation.
I would love to be a henchman.
There you
Like
go.
like for all you Venture Brothers fans out there, like
Yeah.
that sold me on being a henchman. Like
Dude, that's the
I'll
best.
be number 24. Like I don't
Yeah.
need to be number 1. Like 24 is still good. That's
That shows champions, the little guy.
oh
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
It's one of my all-time favorites. The rewatch value on it as well is so good for me. So like I was limiting myself to just certain characters, and I was like, okay, when they release Tomax and Zaymot, I'll get those. But then as I was getting them, I wasn't, and I haven't opened them, so I'm still like those. I'm keeping in the box,
Yeah.
but I'm not overly impressed with them.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the Destro,
The
and
Pimp Daddy one or
what's that?
the Pimp Daddy one?
I bought
Or
both.
okay.
I bought both. Um, and the Pimp Daddy one, I mean, that's something when that first came out, it was one of those things where it was like, what even is this? Why do we need this? Same thing with Disco Skeletor. When they did Disco
Yeah.
Skeletor for the 2000X line, I remember seeing that on pegs and going, who would buy this?
Yeah.
And the answer is, well, 15 years later, it's going to be me. Because after all this time,
Nice. You finally got it.
there's just at this point it's become like such a weird piece, but there's almost like a charm to it now where I look at it and I go, all right, it's ridiculous, but it's our ridiculous.
Yeah, and it is, and it's a weird version of the character, but also from a weird line of that the reboot that failed, but also has a cult following now.
Love it. I love it, and it never should have failed. It was too good to fail, and I throw the blame solely at the feet of Mr. Jeremy Padower.
Oh no! Way to go, Jeremy! Come on. He was too busy on Jack's.
He popped in on Boozing with the Toys a couple months ago now.
Yeah.
And he was like, Shoes, I worked on Masters of the Universe, and I'm trying to put together the timeline in my head, and I'm going, wait a minute. Are you responsible for 2000X and why it failed? And he's just like, ugh.
He's like, I love it, though.
I love 2000X. I think the show, it was spectacular. I really like the figures. I know a lot of people don't like the figures, the body shapes, they're not as bulky, as big as they should be, as gassed out. I don't know, man. I thought it fit the time perfectly. I thought a lot of the characters they did were really great sculpts. Tila, for instance, Mechanic, I thought was terrific. Trying to think like some of the other. Buzz Off is a really good one. I mean, there's a lot of them that are really. The Castle Grayskull was awesome.
Yeah.
And it was just the distribution of the way they did the figures, where now with the Masters Origins line, He-Man and Skeletor are packed separately from the other waves. So they're basically their own wave. It's just those two.
Yeah.
And then you have like your wave of 4 figures. So if a box comes in, It's not 3 He-Man, 3 Skeletor, and like 1 Orko. It's just He-Man and Skeletor in their own box, which is great.
I mean, they're the two you think of when you say Masters of the Universe.
100%. And, and you have to have the top guys on the shelves, right? Like we hear that in every toy line. You buy WWE, you have to be able to go to the store and find a Roman Reigns figure.
Yep.
If you're a kid collecting for the first time, you have to be able to find that AJ Styles. And it's the same thing with He-Man. If you're going to the store and you're a first-time buyer as a kid, your mom's going to buy you a figure. Well, you want the top guys.
Yeah.
But as you get into the collection, you still have to be able to find those other characters, or else your interest just dwindles immediately. And that's what happened with 2000X, because basically every figure other than He-Man and Skeletor was short-packed, and it just cratered the interest in the line.
Mm. Well, yeah, because if it's like I've been to this Walmart or Target for 10 times in a row, and all I'm finding is the same He-Man and Skeletor, I'm going to be like, well, why am I collecting this?
Yeah, what's the point?
Yeah,
and that's what's happened with classifieds now. I see so many people who are just jumping off the boat on G.I. Joe Classified, and it's a shame because they're cool figures. Yeah. But even like I've made kind of the decision to where when I saw they were doing the retro figures, I said that's really where I'm going to put my focus on G.I. Joe, because that's the same scale I had as a kid. It's going to be a lot of the same deco. Like that's really where I want to put my focus. But even those, I've only seen 1 Snake Eyes in stores and a couple of the Cobra Hiss tanks. Everything else I've had to get lucky with just being able to pre-order.
Yeah, with the retros.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen a Storm Shadow and a Cobra Snake Eyes, and then the Hiss tank. Basically. Yeah.
Everything else I just got lucky where my pre-orders have gotten through with Walmart.
Oh yeah. That's extremely lucky. You need to buy a lottery ticket if you've gotten like more than one.
And that's the thing. I've seen so many people who have gotten canceled orders or been sold out as they try to check out, and for whatever reason, all of my retro pre-orders have gone through, and I've gotten them so far, with the exception of the latest wave, which hasn't shipped yet, which was Duke, Cobra Commander, and was it Lady J might have been the third one.
Okay.
But that hasn't shipped yet, so fingers crossed.
Yeah. Right? Did you? We had Kyle Peterson on a few times.
What a monster he is!
Right? He's a psycho. I'm like, I thought I loved collecting. That dude's nuts. But he has that SDCC Cobra Commander, like when he became the mayor of a town, or it was
so good.
Do you have that one? I was like, oh,
It's one of those things I've looked at so many times, and I've had it in my cart, and I'm like, no, not this time, not this time. But the more I get into buying these retros, I feel like even though that this isn't part of the retro line, I feel like it's something I'm going to need to have just as a Cobra Commander fanboy.
Yeah.
So I, maybe, where I'm not going back and buying the whole lines, but I may pick up a couple, like a Cobra Commander, or I love the Crimson Twins. I don't know what it was about them. If you hit me, my brother feels the same pain. That's so stupid. Yeah, I used to just hit my brother, not because I wanted to feel it. I wanted him to feel it. Like, that's the point.
It's like, why? Like, maybe it was like, maybe it was trying to teach the kids, like, be nice to your brothers.
Yeah, I guess. Like, don't make everybody feel pain.
Yeah. So do you have with I see the Funkos back there. Is it only wrestling Funkos and Master of the Universe, or do you get any of the G.I. Joe, like Zartan and stuff?
So I got out of collecting for a really long time. Probably about 10, maybe a little more than that, maybe a little more than 10 years ago. I was moving. I sold everything in my collection. And then for a long time, I just never bought anything because financially it didn't make sense in my world at the time.
Yeah.
And a few years ago, probably about 5 years ago at this point, I got into collecting Funkos. And I was like, Funkos are cheap. They're easy to store. You can have literally any character you've ever liked, from any walk of life is in the same scale and design. So your John Cena can hang out with your He-Man, who hangs out with Blanche from the Golden Girls, who hangs out with RoboCop. Like, that's pretty zany. Like, and I loved the first couple I had opened and, just like thrown on a shelf. And then I was like, wow, like you lose a lot of space because if you keep them in the box, you can stack them. So I started keeping them in the box, and at one point I had the whole wall of my dining room was just stacked with hundreds of pops.
Yeah, been there.
And
Yeah.
I got to the point where I literally had to throw out my dining room table because it was taking away pop space.
Oh, geez, yeah.
So looking back, that was an egregious error in judgment. But, we make mistakes and move on. So that was my thing where I was like, I'm just going to collect Funkos. It's all the characters I like, and it's all the same scale, so that's cool, and I can live with that. I would really like to collect vintage Masters, but I never thought I would be in a position where I could be like, go back and spend that kind of money. And then I don't know if you remember, Zombie Sailor had like this big warehouse Masters of the Universe find, uncirculated, unopened cases of vintage Masters of the Universe figures. And I've known Zombie a long time. And I'm watching this and I'm going, okay, you know what? Let me just put a toe in the water here. Just a little dip.
Yeah.
And I bought from him Stondar and Rockon, the Rock people.
Yeah.
Mint on card. Weren't the most expensive figures by any means, but for me, for a toy expenditure at the time, it was a pretty big expenditure. But I'm like, you know what? This doesn't mean I have to get everyone. These two characters, they're their own Rock people. It's not like there's like 5 more characters in the horde that I got to get or whatever. I'm like, I could just buy these 2 Rock people and that can be it. Cool. That lasted all of like 7 minutes because of me. Yeah. And immediately after that, I'm back on eBay and I'm like, oh, let me see if I can find something else. And let me see if I can find this. And then I started getting invited into like Facebook auctions, like toy auctions on Facebook, like live auctions. And these things are like all over the place. So I started finding all these groups and stuff. And it would be like, hey, we got this lot of He-Man figures, and this one's complete, and this has this. And I was finding so many of them at like relatively cheap prices.
Yeah.
So then all of a sudden, I'm like, yeah, I'll buy this. $60. I got 5 figures. It's great, like, cool. And I'm like, well, if I got those 5, I need the next 5. And if I get those 5, I need this. And like once you start knocking out as many of the lower price figures, I was surprised at how many of the vintage He-Man figures are actually very, very affordable. Yeah. So it became very easy to say, yes, I'll pick up this one for $12, or I'll take this one for 14, or maybe I'll get a little crazy and pick up one for 20. Yeah. But like, and there's a lot of them that you can do that with, and you start like accumulating all these toys with, and then you get to that next level. Where it's like, oh, $50, $75. Yeah. Oh, do you want a Horde Trooper complete with his laser? Because that's going to be $100. And it's like, oh my God, $100 on a figure. What is happening to me? So I just went down that rabbit hole, and now it's just kind of like exploded, like more than I ever thought it would. And if you can see behind me, I have like my Eternia. Yeah. So
crap. Yeah.
This is only the central tower of the Eternia playset.
Yeah.
I have my Eternia is complete, and I have the box.
Oh my God! So when you were a kid, were you saving stuff like that? Because all my stuff, I destroyed the boxes. I was like,
no, not when I was a kid. I had no regard for packaging.
Yeah.
Even though as a kid, the Masters of the Universe packaging played such a role in your imagination for the toys themselves. The artwork on the boxes to this day I find to be absolutely incredible. And even on the new Origin series, I think so much of the artwork and the packaging that they've done on like the vehicles like the Sky Sled and the new Land Shark, like they're just really, really super cool. The Castle Grayskull that's just starting to hit stores now, they look great. And I almost feel bad with opening them now. It's crazy. But like at the time as a kid, like, yeah, it looked cool, and it was great. Like it was food for thought. Like it gave you these ready-made battle scenes. That way, when you got home and tore it open, you already knew, like, all right, this is the way these the evil warriors have to attack Castle Grayskull, and then He-Man's got to come down this angle with the Bashosaurus and start putting it to Skeletor. Like,
yeah.
Like, it was so great for that. But, like, I never, ever thought to save boxes or keep stuff in the box as a kid. I was a menace.
Yeah, exactly. I'm surprised most of my toys survived. Like, I gave a lot of my stuff to my nephew, and
Hmm.
then I was like, "Oh, my stuff was in pretty good condition. Maybe like, oh, he's not using my firehouse anymore. I'll
Yeah,
grab it next time I'm over." Right?
it's funny. My mom gave away all my stuff. Like once we got to like a certain age, and then it was like her cousins' kids were younger, so it was like, oh, I've got all these toys. Like here you go.
Yeah.
And I remember this is gonna sound bad, but this is the way it was. We like my great uncle died, and we're at his funeral, and like we weren't close. It's not like I was losing sleep over it, which sounds bad, but
But you're great. I mean, at a certain
yeah,
point of relatives, it's like unless they're living with you and you're,
yeah.
it's when it gets that far removed.
But my mom's cousin comes up to me and she's like, "Oh, I still have all," and this is like 2002, like maybe like that. She's like, I still have all of your He-Man toys, and I like stopped dead in my tracks, and I'm like, I want those back, right?
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I guess, yeah. And I've never seen that woman again, so I don't know
Yeah.
if she ghosted me or
She's probably like, "That's a weirdo. Like, why does he want it back?"
and I have a habit of like the resting bitch face,
Hmm.
so when people don't know me overly well, like this woman, obviously, like I probably had the like most serious, like cold ice grill of the century, like on at that time. Like when I heard she had them, I was like, I want those back, like.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Oh God, like get
Yeah.
away from me, please! Like all I want to do is get to my car. Just please leave me alone."
She's like making sure you don't follow her.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man. Yeah, but I mean, like, if you hear that, you're instantly just like, yeah,
Oh, the
can I
Spidey
have it back?
senses went off
Yeah.
immediately. I was like, I need to have those back, like please. And all my toys would have been abused and worn, but they were, those are my childhood toys. I beat the
Exactly.
crap out of those.
Yeah, it's different. It's sentimental. It's
A
different from
hundred
getting them
percent.
from somebody else who beat them up. You're just like, hey, look
Yeah.
at this dent. Like I threw him like off the roof or something. Um. So when you nowadays, are you sticking to new like the Super Seven stuff, or are
Oh wow.
you kind of just focusing right now on going back and being like, I'm just getting vintage.
Dude, I wish I had a focus because so many times I'm like, I need to just limit myself, and then I'll see something and I'm like, I was trying not to buy this, but I need it. Like Thundercats, for instance, the Ultimates
Yeah.
from Super 7.
Hmm.
I was just, I was really worried with Thundercats, where I love Thundercats, but I also know it doesn't have the wide ranging appeal like Masters has, or like GI Joe has, or like
Yeah.
wrestling has. It has its audience, but it's kind of more of a niche audience.
Hmm.
And I was really worried that I would buy these figures and the interest wouldn't be there from the fan base at this higher price point because they're ultimates and all that articulation and deco and all that. And I was worried it would get canceled so early that I'd end up with a very incomplete collection.
Yeah.
So I kind of stayed out of it while they put like the first three waves up for pre-order. And then it was actually Brian Myers said, we were at a toy store and he's like, dude, like I saw these Thundercats figures and he's showing me pictures and he's like, you love the like Thundercats. Like, why don't you have these? And like Brian's one of the worst friends I've ever had because like he just like he pokes the bear because he knows like I won't be able to say
Dude,
no.
before I was I listened to that podcast, I had maybe like four wrestling figures because like I
Yeah.
loved wrestling, I was just never into the figures.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like I need more. I have like a crap ton of figures laying on the ground. I'm doing a John Cena basic thugonomics,
Oh,
like
love it.
from 2002 to 2000, like WrestleMania 22. That's probably my cutoff minus the 2008 Rumble return because that was such a huge pop. And like I never stopped being a Cena fan. I was kind of like, oh, I see what he's becoming. He's becoming the Hogan, like the
Yeah.
kid, someone to look up to. That's fine. But I was never like, oh, Death to Cena. You only have five moves. Like Bret Hart, Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold, The Rock.
Every single one.
Like
The problem.
they're not doing anything different. Like I could put together a Stone Cold comeback. I could put together a Rock comeback. You know?
The problem with Cena is that he was just on TV so much
Yeah.
that yeah, he was doing the same thing every other guy has done, But like even while Hogan was at his peak, you never saw Hogan wrestle on TV unless it
True.
was
And
a
he wasn't
Saturday
doing a
night's
lot
main
of
event
shit.
or a pay-per-view or you went to a live event. So like Cena, you were watching have new matches twice a week. So his TV age was a lot older than
Right.
Hogan's or Flair's
Yeah.
or Brett's. You know, even during like the beginning of Raw, like when Raw first came into existence, yeah, Shawn was on TV and Brett was on TV, but you're still only getting those guys. Raw was only an hour and a half or something at the time. So,
Yeah.
you know, nowadays, Raw is its own worst enemy, being 3 hours. Like, there's so much filler just because they need to fill the time. You know, it's impossible to write
True.
a compelling 3 hour television show every week and then have to add on a 2 hour SmackDown and then have to add on 205 Live and then have to add on NXT. It burns out all these characters, and
Yeah.
I think that's one of the main things hurting wrestling right now. But it's a double edged sword because it's also saving wrestling because the TV rights packages are worth so much money because it's live content, and these channels are running out of live content that is must see in the moment. There's no more.
Yeah.
It's very rare for a show to come along, a regular scripted television show to come along right now where it becomes must-see content. You know, the water cooler show, like they would say back in the
Yeah,
day.
exactly. Like back when Friends or Frasier and
Exactly.
Cheers, stuff like
Great
that.
examples. And, you know, and Game of Thrones, I felt like got there.
Yeah.
Walking Dead, I think, was there for a period of time. It lost it, and you know,
Oh
the
yeah.
last couple
I stopped
seasons.
after I think season 7. I was just like, I'm
I
done.
don't even know if I made it to 7.
Yeah, like with Negan and stuff. I think that
Oh,
was
yeah, I was before that. I jumped
yeah.
off.
After that, towards the end of that arc, I was kind of like, I'm done.
You know, it was just like, how long can you keep walking, finding more supplies, and then finding new communities? It's,
Yeah,
you know,
it's like 9 out of 10 times are psycho, so it's like you obviously know where it's going.
yeah. So, you know, there's very few of those shows. So it makes the rights for all this original content that's airing live, like, you know, and, you know, wrestling may not be a real sport, but it is in the moment. Like, and if you miss
Yeah,
it, well,
athletic entertainment.
yeah, you
Well,
know, it's, if you miss it, you miss it.
yeah, exactly. And I just feel like I get it. Yeah, like that makes sense because he was, when they say shoved down the throats, it was more, but also I don't think at that time when he was coming up, so many people had left the business and or sadly passed away at one point
Mm.
that could have carried the torch. Like you had Guerrero and Benoit go down. You had Stone Cold go out with a neck injury. Rock, he didn't think he was going to leave forever to Hollywood, because like, oh, he's just going to do Scorpion King and then he's going to come back.
Yeah. If you think about it, I mean, if you say, hey, what's Stone Cold's greatest feud?
Yeah.
You go to McMahon and The Rock.
Yep.
You know, if you say what's Hogan's greatest feud, you probably go Savage because Hogan's real strength was just running through the Monster Factory. Every time they bring in the new monster, Hogan runs through him.
Yeah.
If you say who's Cena's greatest feud,
I say Orton or Edge.
I would go Punk.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one. Also, like the WrestleMania 21, like the lead up with JBL, that was. I felt like that the match wasn't the best, but the lead up to that, just like with the storyline of like you're from the wrong side of the tracks, that kind of stuff. During that time, it worked, but
and he's wrestled Orton on pay per view. What is it, like 916 times? And
yeah, there's probably half of the amount.
But it's like. And the thing is, like, how many of them are really memorable? Because they've happened so many times that it's hard to just have a moment that really stands out. So much of the last 10 to 15 years of wrestling for me gets kind of just mashed all together. And, like, you kind of got to work to try to pull a timeline out.
Yeah, true. True. If it's not, like, major things like the pipe bomb or the Money in the Bank in Chicago or WrestleMania 35, like the big milestones. The rest is like, when was, I couldn't even remember like, oh, when was Khali world champion? Like,
yeah,
he came out and beat Cena, and I think he beat Cena for the title, and then Cena won it back right away.
I couldn't even tell you.
Yeah, right. It's crazy.
It just becomes like a bowl of minestrone soup where it's like, okay, I wonder what I'm getting in this spoonful.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree totally. And so is that. So speaking of wrestling, since you still semi-retired, fully retired?
Well, I think to retire, you need to have had a career to retire from. Um, and I don't know that I ever got to that point.
Your retirement speeches. He was supposed to pinch me.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, but even before I was the Revolting Blob, I mean, I was just L Shoes, which was a nickname I got in high school. And that was, I started in 2001 and then did that for a few years. And then I became the villainous Maximus Sex Power in about 2008. Nice. Yeah, I was basically doing like a fat, heel Rick Rude gimmick. Oh, nice. And I'd come out in the robe and trunks and do the unveiling, and
that gives you even more heat because you're out of shape. Like you're not Rick Rude.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I mean, I was in shape for me, but I wasn't in shape by in shape standards.
Well, I mean, like, if you're doing the Rick Rude thing, people think it's Rick Rude, like just shredded to the gills, and it's just like
But that was probably the most like quote unquote success I had with my wrestling career because that was around the time where like wrestling just became very wrestling centric. Mm-hmm. So you had like a lot of the indie shows in the area were just being populated by guys who were great athletes and phenomenal quote unquote wrestlers, but there weren't a lot of characters. It felt like a lot of the same guys, throwing arm drags for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and you couldn't really tell them apart, and you couldn't really, when you went home, you're like, oh, that match was really good, but like, who do you remember? The 12 guys who wore the same tights and threw the same arm drags and had the same beard and haircut, or do you remember the fat guy who pulled off his robe and started dancing?
Yeah, right, exactly. And it's like, and with that, it's like we do, like it's like either one side or the other. People are like, oh, it's too gimmicky or it's too wrestling based. It's hard to come in the middle these days, but it's like if you could get somewhere where it's like people are behind you, like people love to see Cesaro and Daniel Bryan. They're like the technical guys, but they've also learned how to adapt to like
correct
show personality. Even though Vince doesn't see it in Cesaro, I think this WrestleMania showed he needs to get a bigger push. But
yeah, it's just and the thing is too is wrestling fans are a very finicky audience, and I describe myself this way when it comes to Masters of the Universe. You feel so close to the product because you care so much about it.
Yeah.
That you're entitled. You feel entitled, like you need to give us exactly what we want. And if you don't do it, I will rant on the internet for the next 51 days, making the same point over and over and over. Yeah. And like I've had that conversation with Robert from Mattel, and I'm like, right? I'm like, I know I have nothing to do with it, but and he's like, yeah, I know you're part of the team. I go, I know I'm not, and he's like. And he even said, he's like, Masters of the Universe fans are some of the most nitpicky fans on the planet, like because they care, they're so invested in the product. And wrestling fans are similar. They love it. They absolutely love it. They want to support it. But so many times they say, hey, give us something new, give us something different, give us something fresh. And then when you try to do that, they say, whoa, 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 whoa. Hold the wheel right there, Pat Sajak. We got time for another round.
Yeah.
So we wanted new and different, but this guy's not what we know, so we don't want him.
We want new and different, but someone from the Attitude Era coming back, right? That's basically what it is, because it's like, oh, we tried this new guy that you kept saying give a push, but it's like, oh, we wanted something else, but we're not going to tell you what it is because we don't even know what it is.
No one knows what it is.
Yeah, right, exactly. So now that we're kind of coming to the end of this, I kind of want to see what are your top like 2 or 3 like grail items like that you have that are like, oh man, this is like the pinnacle. I got this, and this is
so my Eternia. So okay. I have my Eternia is complete. I have the box, and when I got back into collecting vintage Masters, the Eternia just seemed so out of the realm of possibility. It wasn't something I had as a kid. And even like growing up and like learning about it. And, it was kind of in the same vein as the USS Flag from the G.I. Joe line, the aircraft carrier, where it was one of those things that you never had it, but you knew a guy who had a cousin who knew someone 2 towns over who had once seen it in stores. Like, that's the way it felt. And, there's another Brian Myers story. So we were having he was asking me about Masters because Brian's not a Masters guy, but because I'm such a big fan of it, like he'll be like, hey, so like what's the deal with this? Like he'll see like a picture online or something and be like, hey, what's going on with this? And so I'm explaining Eternia to him one day. And he's like, dude, you need to have that. And I go, I feel like I'll get it at some point, but it's like really far down the line. I had a number in my head that I thought I was probably going to end up having to save up to pay it, because one of the big things for me was that I really want it with the box, because the box artwork on the Eternia playset is just so incredible. Later that night, in a classic case of figure fate, my He-Man dealer,
Oh, man.
and I know how shady that sounds.
No, we all have a guy.
There's a guy in Maryland who's his name's Alan. He runs a store called Eternia Dreams.
And what part of Maryland is that?
He is in Taneytown, which is about 45 minutes outside of Baltimore.
Okay, I went to school in Baltimore, and I never saw, like, have they been open long?
No, the dude's probably, I think he's even a couple years younger than me, so he's had the store maybe a couple years now. Okay. I actually found out about him through an ad on Instagram. Like he had done some sponsored posts, and he had just come onto my feed as like a promoted picture. And it was like, oh, live sales happening this day, whatever. So like on Facebook, and I tuned in one day and I lurked for a while. Like I was just watching him do his live auctions, and he's actually pretty entertaining and kept the sales moving. So it never really dragged. And he always had like pretty good stuff, and he knew his He-Man stuff because he was like a big He-Man collector.
Okay, so you knew he was gonna hook you up.
Well, I was, for a while I just lurked in his auctions. Then I started buying small from him. I'd get my stuff and see how it was. I'd be like, oh, you know what? Like this guy's actually pretty trustworthy. My figures are coming in good condition, like as described. Wasn't like, he wasn't like trying to pull the wool over your eyes, So I come home that night. I had the conversation with Brian that morning. Come home that night. I go on Facebook, and he has the guy Alan has it laid out on the display case at his store. He goes, looking to sell this Eternia complete with the box.
Oh, man.
And he puts the price up, $3,000. And I'm looking at that and I go, oh my God. Okay, like I know it's figure fate. Like I know it is. Like these things just don't happen by accident. Yeah, so I'm thinking about it. And I'm just like, well, $3,000 is a lot of money. And it's like money that I couldn't even fathom spending on a toy or like anything really. If I'm like, I've spent less money on cars. Like, like, and you need a car.
Yeah, exactly. But you also need an Eternia, though.
And so, and the thing was I had prepared myself to spend a hell of a lot more money down the line when I finally felt like I would be in a position to buy Eternia. And I looked at it, and I'm starting to read the comments, and like a bunch of people are commenting, but no one's buying it. Like they're all like, oh, this is so great. Oh, you know who would be, and they're tagging their friends who they think may be interested in it. And finally I just messaged the guy. I'm like, yo, I want to buy this. Let's do it before I change my mind. And there has never been a more come to Jesus moment in my life than when I had to, like, my hands were shaking.
You had to hit the send PayPal.
I had to hit send on PayPal. When you're looking at that number, like it doesn't even look real. Yeah. Like when you see like an athlete signs a new contract and it's like just so many millions of dollars, and you're just like, oh yeah, that's what they make, because it's not a real number to real people. Regular people don't make $300 million. But I'm looking at that and I'm just like, $3,000. I'm shaking, like, and I'm just like, oh, and it hurts so bad. It hurts, and I'm just like, okay, we did it.
Until it showed up. It hurt.
Right? and then the pandemic happened, and because he didn't want to ship it to me. Well, I shouldn't say he didn't want to ship it to me. He's like, listen, I'll ship it. I'll pack it great. He's like, but this thing is massive. Yeah. So it was going to cost like $400 if I wanted to ship it properly. Yeah. So I made the plan. I was going to fly up to Baltimore, rent a car, drive it home, and just do it that way, transport it myself. Yeah. Then COVID happened.
Right. Yeah.
So he held on to it for a while. I mean, he had my money already.
Yeah.
And then he eventually knew someone who was driving to Florida, and he's like, "Yo, if you're cool with this, you can meet with
Figure
this
trade right
person."
there. Yeah.
I was like, "Yo, I'll throw her some money for her hassle, whatever." And that's what ended up happening about 2 months after. So
Oh,
this woman drove it down. I met
I,
up with her
yeah.
in a
Oh
Best Buy
man.
parking lot. Pulled this giant Eternia out of her trunk.
Oh man. At least you knew. At least then it was like better than being in the back of a UPS truck or USPS truck
Yeah, and then
or FedEx
like
truck.
I'd never seen one in person, so like I knew it was big. I knew it was big. I knew the box was big. I didn't realize just how big. It's because it's not only like tall, but it's
Yeah.
also very wide, very thick on the sides because some of the pieces are just so bulky.
Yeah.
So the size of it, which is what she said, really surprised me.
Yeah.
And I was just like, wow, this thing is heavy and fat and but and it takes up so much space when you build it out to complete it. I don't have anything in my house remotely long enough to actually put the thing together completely. So I just put up the central tower and I still have all the rest of the pieces in the box. That way, I'm actually in the process of moving right now. So I have a lot of stuff getting boxed up and stored away for
Oh,
now. But
I dread that day. When
oh,
like, oh, I gotta pack up everything. Gotta take this
it,
deep off.
yeah, like, and I don't even have like a ton of stuff displayed, but it's just as a collector, like you're like, okay, everything, these are your babies, you gotta package them, swaddle them in the linen, and
Exactly.
and you don't want anything to happen to them, so you're like super careful. And it's just, I hope to be able to finally put up my display with Eternia. I even bought a set of, because it's got the monorail that swings around all three towers.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Oh man.
So, and it's got like a battery powered cars that all go on the rail, but the tracks are very fragile. So I have original tracks, but I also bought a set of
Ooh.
reproduction tracks that are much sturdier.
To
So
put up on.
I won't use my original tracks because they snap almost instantly. And
Like as
they
soon as you
even,
put the monorail on it, it's just gonna.
well, they form the monorail. So all the monorail tracks they're very, very flimsy. Even when they were new, they were very, like, you could put it together for the first time. I've heard plenty of stories of kids getting it for Christmas that year
Uh
and breaking the tracks almost immediately.
huh. Oof.
So I went on eBay, bought a set of reproduction
Smart.
tracks, and I'm ready. Like, and I'm just like, oh man, this is gonna be so cool. My gray skull up here, my snake mountain up here, my slime pit there, and so
Nice.
it's just a matter of getting everything together. That's my number one grail that I own. Recently, I'll show you these. These are recent purchases. I did a little unboxing when I got them on YouTube. You go to my YouTube and check that out because I'm
Wait,
always,
what's the channel?
it's youtube.com/Joe Shoes. Most of it is just, I do a lot of food review videos, but I also do a bunch of He-Man unboxings and a bunch of vintage Masters unboxings when I get stuff in. These two figures I just got very recently.
Ooh, and they're the ones that they have like the little thing you spin it like.
No, they don't have the pull ropes,
Oh, okay.
but they do have. There's all pieces that go with them though. So,
Okay.
but they are Rodar and Twistoid. They were released at the really the tail end of the Masters line,
Okay.
so they weren't by that time. Really, everyone had pretty much checked out on Masters of the Universe, and
Yeah.
it's not like these characters were ever in the show or anything to make them desired. But because of that, no one had them. They became very rare.
Mm-hmm.
So to find them and to find them complete and in good condition gets pretty pricey. And once again, went to my He-Man dealer, and he had picked up a very high end collection and was piecing it out for the guy. And these came up, and no one was bidding. And this was the problem too. No one was bidding, and I'm like, there wasn't a lot of people watching live in the auction. And I'm like, ooh, this may be a good night for me to get some good here.
Yeah.
And I'm watching it, and he brings these out, and I think they were asking like $850 for the pair at first.
Okay.
And I'm like, I don't know, but I can't do it. $850 is just
Yeah.
too much. It's not overpriced. I mean, it's in the zone for really good condition figures with complete with their accessories and stuff. It's
Yeah.
just that's a pretty big nut to crack. And then he goes, you know what? For tonight, I'll bring it down to $750. And I'm like, well, $750 is actually a pretty good price.
Yeah.
And these things are only going to get more expensive. And I'm really worried about the prices of Masters of the Universe figures with the new show coming out. I'm worried about the older figures going up in price because now you're going to have renewed interest from a lot of people that aren't already involved in collecting.
True.
So it's like one of those things where I'm like, I have to kind of get as much as I can while I can before things really explode. Like stuff is high now anyway.
Yeah.
But with the new show coming out, I think that's just going to drive things even more through the ceiling.
You're right. Exactly. Like I bought a mint on card Boss Man Hasbro for $35.
Let me tell you about these mint on card Hasbros. I got a whole story for you about. I get buried by my friends now. Around 2000, I just graduated high school. I have a big time job at the Burger King, so I got that spending cash, you know. Yeah. And I'm a big wrestling fan. And I'm going on eBay all the time and just picking up all these old figures. LJNs, $5 here, $10 here. I remember getting like a mint condition Demolition Axe LJN for $18.
Yeah, exactly.
and now I'm picking up mint on card LJNs. Miss Elizabeth, $25. Bruno Sammartino autographed, $22. Man, like I'm just picking, you know, I'm not like trying to build a collection, but if I saw something, I'd be like, oh, that'd be cool to have. Yeah. Pick it up. Hasbros. I start picking Hasbros. Mint on card Hasbros. No more than like $10 a pop.
Right? It's like they were given away. Like they were
being given away for years. For years. Yeah. I built up a collection of mint on card Hasbros, probably about 35 or 40 deep. I don't think I even spent $10 each to get them all. And then around 2010, when I start selling my collection, wrestling was so in the toilet, like from the collector perspective, that I think I took a loss on everything at that time.
Oh. Yeah, because Jax had lost the licensing and Mattel was taking over and hadn't shown like, hey, we're gonna rebuild the wrestling.
So I sold off all these Hasbros, all these LJNs. I took a bath on everything. I had a full collection of ECW figures autographed. I sold the whole collection for $200, and that because that was literally all I could get for it.
And you were like, "Oh well, I'll just take it because I got."
I was like, "Thank God somebody wants these," because I was offering them to people and nobody wanted them. Like, oh no, I don't want no ECW figures for years. Like if you ever see the videos where Matt and Brian go to the wrestling universe with Jack Sabbath, Jack is a guy I've known for 20 years at this point. He had a wall of ECW figures in his store for $5 each, mint on card, for over a decade.
Well, I blame Brian and New Jack.
100%.
New Jack and Brian, the reason why the ECW figures are like
100%. Because every time. All of it, those guys mention stomp figures, and then all of a sudden there's a mad rush to go get stomp figures.
Well, it's like the whole thing with Matt getting the rookie figures is like everyone's gonna get that Bad Boys Austin, and it's like, dude, this was like $1 figure at best. Like I got the Outsiders, the original San Francisco toy makers, like when they first went to WCW, I got them in Big Show for like $5 each, and then I resold them for like triple that. Like I'm like, holy crap! Like these are nothing figures. Like
no, like even what was it? Probably about 3-4 years ago, Brian had to he got injured, so he was home for like a couple months.
Yeah,
and I sent him like a care package to his house, like and it was like a WWF coloring book and some crayons and like just stupid stuff to do while he was home. But like one of the things that I sent him was a Bad Boys Austin because it was something I found for like $8, and I was like, oh, this will be a funny gift, like
now
a Bad Boys Austin figure, and it's like,
oh no, like I took $20 now, like on card.
Yeah. But I was just like at the time, I'm like, yo, like I took such a bath on my collection, and Brian makes fun of me all the time. He's like, shoes, you had such like a high end collection, and you literally gave it away for pennies.
Yeah, right. It's like you basically sold all of them for what one on card would probably be now.
Dude, right? when I see like what some of these figures go for now, and I like I had a mint on card Honky Tonk Man LJN, and my eBay auction ended at $35 when I sold it.
Oh man,
$35. I think Zorro
shoot.
Mendez probably pops that
Yeah,
out for $450 now.
yeah, right, exactly. Good God, even the beat up ones, like you have a chewed nose $1 million man, that's still gonna go for 200,
Yeah,
like 150 maybe if he's gonna cut you a deal.
yeah. It's just it's timing. Timing is everything. And sometimes like you don't know if things are even it's like any other commodity. It can continue to go down. It can continue to hold no value.
Yeah, or
So
it could be like the card, the card game. It's like you
oh,
can't.
the card game is ridiculous. I mean, I don't even want to touch that with the 10-foot pole.
Oh man,
But
I got into
like
it was bad.
it's just it's wild how like that happens. Basically, and last year, Papa Bear Paul, Brian, and I have like a group chat because we talk about sports a lot, and we like just all got into baseball cards. So we were like joining card breaks and buying stuff and investing in PSA 10s. And like I was like, oh, I'm gonna pick this guy on the Mets that I like, Jacob DeGrom. He's a good pitcher. I like watching him. I'm gonna buy a couple of his rookie cards. So I bought a bunch of like PSA 10 graded rookie cards. And I'm a big baseball fan. Baseball is like
Yeah,
my first love in life. It's not like I was just like a fly by night baseball guy.
yeah,
But I bought like a stack of these PSA 10 rookie cards. By the end of the season, each one of them was worth a minimum of double what I paid for it.
yeah. Right. It's just like
It was just like out of nowhere. And like I had bought a bunch of Ken Griffey Jr. rookie cards.
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
bought a bunch of them because I love Ken Griffey Jr. Like that was one of the guys when I was a
Well, he has
kid.
one of the best swings, the best,
Oh,
probably the
oh,
best swing in the game.
it's just he played the game in a way where it just looked so pretty.
Yeah,
The aesthetics of him running and swinging and making catches in the outfield. He had that style, like
I grew up a Philly. Like I was not even a Mariners fan, but you had to love Ken Griffey because
100%.
swag,
Absolutely.
especially Major League when he when he flips the bat after hitting the home run at the end of
Oh
the
yeah.
game. Oh man,
Wearing his hat backwards in batting practice, like, oh, he's like, oh, this guy's so cool. He wore a backwards hat. Like, I'm gonna wear a backwards hat now. Like Ken Griffey Jr. does it.
yeah,
They
right.
even made
Exactly.
a starting lineup figure of him with a backwards hat.
I
Like,
feel like every figure now for him it has to have the backwards.
I really wish his Hall of Fame plaque would have had it with a backwards hat.
I feel like they should have, but probably some like stickler up there was like, oh, it has
Oh,
to
of
be the
course,
Mariners.
of
You gotta be able to
course.
see it says the Mariners. Like everyone knows who he played for.
Yeah,
Not
so I
like
had I
nobody
had
knows.
this stack of cards, and then not only was it Ken Griffey Jr. and not only was the card business going up,
Yeah.
but then the MLB Network did a Ken Griffey Jr. documentary. So it was like all those cards that I had just bought like a month and a half before went like triple value overnight, and it was like, what? Okay, that was lucky. Like,
Yeah, exactly. My girlfriend's dad, her and her older brother, him and her older brother, quite the baseball cards, probably like the late '80s through the early 2000s. So they have like one of those Home Depot shelving things of just like of baseball cards, and I'm like, oh, you got to go through it now. Like this is like you could have
yeah.
a Jeter rookie card, you could have multiple Jeter rookie cards, you could have an A-Rod because they'd stopped collecting maybe when he got drafted to the Texans, so they could have, I'm like you could have all this stuff. Like it's crazy.
I had 5 Derek Jeter rookie cards just sitting in a box in my closet.
Right? And you're just like, oh, he's great, but baseball cards weren't worth nothing.
I was like, you know what? I'll hold on to them because he's like pretty good, and like because even like so much of my stuff before I like moved when I got rid of everything, I was went through it and I was like, okay, trash, 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 because I grew up during the junk wax era, so a lot of my cards were from that overproduced late '80s, early '90s era
The
where
Gundam stuff.
everything is just garbage. But I had gone through it and I was like, oh, okay, Derek Jeter draft pick cards. Yeah, we'll save those. They may be worth $20 down the line somewhere or something. Or,
Oh yeah, right.
yeah, Pedro Martinez rookie card. Okay, we'll save that. But the Joe Orsilacs did not make the cut. The Pat Tablers did not make the cut. As much as I love Greg
Jim
Jeffries,
Thome.
which one?
Jim
Jim
Thome.
Thome. Hey, he's a Hall of Famer now.
Yeah, oh, Matt Stairs. Like Matt Stairs.
Matt Stairs is, like all those guys. Carney Lansford and Joe Carter, Kelly Gruber, Wild Thing Mitch Williams. I mean, you go on that Phillies team from, what was it, 93? You had Dutch Dalton behind the plate, Crockett first, Mickey Morandini.
I wanted to be Darren Dalton.
Really?
Yeah, like I have a bat still from like, oh, this was like the Rawlings like commemorative RBI bat because he had made like so many RBIs or something. I was a huge Darren Dalton fan.
I remember like one of the coolest things I thought about Darren Dalton. I remember him and Lenny Dykstra used to drink heavy together and then get pulled over for DUI like on the reg. But like Darren Dalton's wife was like a Hooters waitress, and like being like 13 or something, I thought that was like the coolest thing I'd ever heard.
Yeah, right? That tracks though for Darren Dalton. I was like, oh, I remember he came back for like the '93 team like reunion. I was like, hey, at least he kept his hair, but his knees, like he has all these scars and stuff.
Yeah, well, he was in that really bad car accident too that like almost killed him. Yeah, right? But even I mean, I think, yeah, I think it was cancer. Ended up getting him at the end. Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah, but
and it's also a reminder of how old you get. Like,
yeah,
you know, like when Ken Griffey Jr. is going to the Hall of Fame, I'm going, wait a minute, I remember like when he just started the major leagues. Like, why is he going into the Hall of Fame already? Who does he think he is?
Right, exactly. Or like, well, the wrestlers that start going in, like, what? I was watching you. I was like 10 years old. Like, no.
You know, like we're sitting here and like, you know, not for nothing. It's like, you know, who's going to be in the Hall of Fame soon, I guess, because like they're running out of like old guys to put in.
Yeah.
Like you're like, at some point, Hornswoggle's got to go in. And it's like,
if Khali and Drew Carey and Kid Rock are in, like, I feel like he's done a lot more than Kid Rock or Drew Carey did for the
It's at this point, it's like I don't even know what makes a Hall of Famer anymore because so much of wrestling is just tied to your nostalgia and your memories.
Yeah.
That even though for someone like me who does not enjoy the current product, which is why like I just stopped watching it. For me, I never wanted to be one of those people who
hate watching it.
Who hate watches it. Like, oh, well, I watch wrestling on Monday nights. This is what I do. Even if I don't like it, it's what I do. Like, I never wanted to be that guy where then I'm on Twitter and I'm like, oh, and this sucks and this guy sucks and everything sucks and people suck and what. I never wanted to be that guy. So I just like stopped watching it. You know, there's too many other things that I enjoy. You know, whether it's He-Man or playing skee ball or just sitting on the porch with a frosty beverage and just admiring the moon. You know, there's all these things that I enjoy doing. So like, what's the point of doing something that doesn't make you happy?
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
but there's some kid out there who's watching wrestling right now, and that kid's 7 years old, and he thinks that Titus O'Neil is a Hall of Famer.
Yeah,
and he's like, yo, hell yeah, Titus O'Neil. You know, and when that kid grows up, he's gonna be like, yo, remember Titus O'Neil? Like,
yeah, exactly. It's like it's who you connect with. Like, exactly.
Yeah, the same way I pop for Hercules. You know, like we're not sitting here gonna wax poetic about Hercules, but I was a kid and that WrestleMania 5 match against King Haku, my brother and I reenacted the finish of it a billion times. You know, Haku goes for the clothesline, Hercules ducks, picks him up, backdrop suplex. 1, 2, Hercules lifts his shoulder just at the very end to keep Haku down and get the win. It was spectacular.
Wow. That's crazy. I was like, that's also like those memories I feel like connect you even more to like the wrestler. Like
100%.
Like exactly. Like I remember like, you know, giving stunners and getting rock bottomed like with my cousins.
Yeah.
And like sweet chin music, and it was just like telling people to suck it and getting
trouble. By the time when I was in high school and like Steve Austin Mania was like had taken over the world, you could not go to a high school dance and not like get stunnered by someone or not have someone attempt to throw a Stone Cold Stunner on the dance floor. Like
exactly. Exactly. It was the RKO of the 90s.
You know, you just had people like, you know, tagging up on lockers, NWO for life. Like, what?
Exactly. Yeah, if you walk by your friends and you just like that, and people like, what is that?
Yeah, like, exactly, 100%. And like, I think literally every high school kid in 90, 98, 99, you know, everyone crotch chopped everybody else.
Yeah.
Walking through the halls.
Sodas, and just like,
oh, yeah. I remember I used to host these WrestleMania parties every year. So all my friends would come over, but you had to dress like a wrestler. So you had the costume party. Oh, nice. And if you wanted a soda, you had to do the Stone Cold and just put your hand in the air and wave.
Oh, and do that. Yeah.
And then whoever was nearest to the sodas would have to throw it to you.
Oh man, that's sick. I just love that it was such a crusade. Like people don't understand that didn't live through the Attitude Era of just like people are always like, oh, you guys are just too connected to it, and it's like you guys won't let it go. But they don't understand the height and that everybody, even the popular kids, were into wrestling.
Oh yeah, like I kind of feel like I was the guy who made wrestling okay in high school,
Mm-hmm.
because I remember being in high school, and if someone watched wrestling, you were like, oh wow, that guy watches wrestling. And then when it started getting popular, I feel like I had enough cachet in
Mm-hmm.
the within the student body, because I was on a team. I played sports. I was involved in a lot of different clubs and activities. I was just really involved in high school in general.
Yeah.
So I was on, like, I was in with a lot of different groups, like all different cliques, because I was in the sci-fi club, but I also wrote for the newspaper, and I was also on a team. So I was like all different groups of people I had connections and involvement with. And when I started liking wrestling, and then like I'd go to soccer practice, and we'd be stretching to get ready for practice, and I'd jump up and try to put someone in the sharpshooter.
Oh, nice.
And, and my coach would
Yeah.
like, Joe, what are you doing? I'd be like, best there is, best there was, best there ever will be, coach. And he's just like, fine.
And then all of a sudden your gym teacher comes out and gives you an F. Brett, screw Brett.
And it's just like, then like it kind of made it okay for wrestling, to the point where in my my senior year we had like a talent show, and I grabbed 3 of my buddies, and we did a tag team wrestling match on the stage in
Nice.
in the theater of the high school. And this is gonna sound so absurd looking back, especially now. It does not hold up well. The empty arena match between The Rock and Mankind, I thought had some awesome spots that I always like kind of picked out. I was like, wow, this is really cool. So we did this thing where I took chair shots to the head. I took like 4 chair shots and like stumbled around. Finally, like on the 3rd one or whatever, I finally took the bump.
Uh-huh.
And then we worked our way up. It was in this little theater, so like it actually had like kind of stadium seating chairs with like the row of steps that went down to the stage. We worked our way up to the top of the stairs, and finally I get knocked down, and I remember the Mankind roll down the stairs from the empty arena match. I took that bump and just rolled down the flight of stairs and just bumped probably down about 50 stairs, and boom, 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 boom. And finally, when I got to the bottom, I like bounced, and my back just like I ended up like in a sitting up position right up against the side of the stage. And I remember the teacher like going absolutely bonkers, like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" I was like, "Yeah, get out of the way. We're still working here."
Yeah. The teacher's like, "As God is my witness, he spoke in half."
And we won first place, and I won. What did they give us?
I love it.
I got a gift certificate to Sam Goody for
nice.
winning the prize, and I think I used that to buy a Suicide Machine CD, if I remember correctly. So that really dates you.
That's a great story. Oh my God! I think we're going to end it with this, but I definitely want to have you on again.
Sure.
Can you plug socials and anything coming up?
Yeah, you can find me at The Joe Shoes on Instagram and Twitter. Definitely subscribe to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Joe Shoes. I've started doing a little bit on Twitch. I've had Swoggle join me a couple times, where he's watching me eat marshmallow peeps and just general chat amongst friends. So that's twitch.tv/Mr. Joe Shoes. But really, Instagram and Twitter is the easiest way to get at me. The Joe Shoes, all my links are in there, and hit me up. I always try to keep engaged. I try to, it's not like I'm so popular that I can't answer people. So I do have a lot of people hitting me up about Masters of the Universe stuff now. So that's actually really cool, because I really enjoy the conversation.
Nice. Well, all right, guys, go follow him at The Joe Shoes, and we will see you guys later.